Ask is, when Ruyter took the job, is it your sense that he perhaps may not have known what he was getting himself into in terms of all of the elements he would have to deal with?
Good morning. Yes, I think with hindsight, it's clear that he underestimated what the requirements were. But, he came in through the political back door. I know some of the other candidates that were interested in the job and who had thorough engineering background and experience, as well as utility experience. And they were overlooked in expense for Mr. Ruyter. So, and if he was anything of the man he made out to be as a turnaround specialist, he would have done his homework.
So, when was the last time you guys had load shedding? I remember, I think it was 2020 January, where we were introduced to one named Ruyter. That here is a hero of South Africa who's going to help us, who's going to get us out of load shedding. And I remember his exact words were like, give me something like 18 months to about 2 years. I would have sorted out load shedding. And fast forward 3 years later, we moved from stage 2 when he took over to stage 6. So I want us to discuss a little bit of this. I want to share a short clip with you guys, and I'll share some of my thoughts after that.
Ruyter has finally thrown in the towel. The move comes as South Africa battles crippling power cuts that have only really worsened since that crisis began, nearly 15 years ago. Ruyter has been under pressure to fix our electricity woes, and as I said earlier, he's the 11th CEO in the last 13 years. We're joined now by two experts who know all about this. Ted Blom, who is joining us, as well as Professor Mark Swilling, who is also a commissioner of the National Planning Commission and a co-direct at the Center for Sustainability Transitions at Stellenbosch University, and a number of other titles. Ted, let me start with you. One of the obvious questions to now ask is, when Ruyter took the job, is it your sense that he perhaps may not have known what he was getting himself into in terms of all of the elements he would have to deal with?
Good morning. Yes, I think with hindsight, it's clear that he underestimated what the requirements were. But, he came in through the political back door. I know some of the other candidates that were interested in the job and who had thorough engineering background and experience, as well as utility experience. And they were overlooked in expense for Mr. Ruyter. So, and if he was anything of the man he made out to be as a turnaround specialist, he would have done his homework. In fact, Mr. Godin said that out of all the applications, Ruyter actually submitted a video highlighting what he planned to do within what time period. So the fact that he actually missed the ball and he got his brain hijacked after a month or two, because he initially started off making the right noises, and then shortly after that he abandoned the refurbishment of the old power stations. He spent 80 billion rand, 82 billion rand to be precise, on prepaying a debt which could have been used on that refurbishment exercise. Shows to me that he clearly was way out of his depth.
So good riddance as far as you're concerned, Ted?
Well, I think it's worse than that. I think it's 3 wasted years, because we're now further back. Eskom's setback is further back than what it was when he started the job.
All right, Professor Mark Swilling, Ted Blom, shooting straight from the hip. Do you agree with that assessment?
I completely disagree. I do agree that he underestimated the challenge. 9 months after taking up his appointment, he came to the realization that the machines were in much worse condition than what he had assumed, and that unless new generation capacity could be brought onto the grid within 2 years, there would be permanent load shedding by 2024. And so he rationally looked through what were the options and came to the conclusion that renewables plus backup gas and battery was really the only solution, because that can be built on time within 2 years, are affordable, and you could raise the finance for them, unlike the other technology. So that was the strategy.
So here we go. So in 2020, January 2020, when Andre de Ruyter, to much fanfare, was introduced as the new group CEO of Eskom. And this guy was touted as the one who's going to solve the issue of load shedding in South Africa. He was some sort of a hero, if you like. And I want us to learn a few lessons from this particular issue of Eskom load shedding under the Ruyter's appointment. So first, being that when he took over Eskom, load shedding was at stage 2, 46 days in a year of load shedding. So at least say a month and a half of load shedding the country was experiencing. It was bad. And by the time he left Eskom, load shedding was at over 200 days, almost say between 8 to about 6 months of load shedding in a year. Right now, I think we're at 275, almost 9 months or so without load shedding, you know. And when this guy left his position, South Africa was in a horrible situation in terms of load shedding, the economy as well, and things like that. So there's a few points that I want to address today. First being that we need to be careful. Our politicians, they are very incompetent. I know I'm stating the obvious. Already you know that they are incompetent. I don't know how Andre de Ruyter managed to get into the back door to be appointed as Group CEO of Eskom. No less than the fact that he, in 2014 was appointed CEO of NAMPEC, a listed company. In 2014, when he took over, NAMPEC had a market cap of 29 billion, and its share price was at 37 rand. When he left in 2019, NAMPEC was at a market cap of 5 billion, and share price was 7 rand. So he managed to wipe out something like 84% of, under his leadership at least, you know, the value of a business like NAMPEC. So I don't understand from that point in time, what explanation did he give for him to be able to qualify to be a group CEO of such an important institution in Eskom? So there I lay the blame at the feet of our politicians, the ANC government, that how Pravin Gordhan perhaps fought for this guy, for him to be appointed, and how the whole cabinet was able to be convinced that this is the man who will be able to take South Africa to the situation that it was in, bad as it was in stage 2. And I don't think we ever imagined that this situation will get to stage 6 at that point in time, where we had blackouts for the better part of the year, majority part of the year. So our politicians really incompetent, and or perhaps maybe they thought, okay, this guy, we appoint this guy, he doesn't deserve to be in this position. I don't believe that as well, that he deserved to be in that position, and he could be easily manipulated. Maybe he was beholden to other people. I don't know. Hence, at the end, he was just frustrated, and he was just throwing everything at the wall, whatever sticks, you know. And it was so disappointing because when after he was appointed, it was so very strange. A lot of people were saying that, I mean, I think there's about 142 people who applied for this position, and some of those were engineers who understood the language, who understood the mechanics of the power station, who understood the ins and outs of running machineries that Eskom was running. But there was a lawyer appointed to run such an important state institution and all of that. And it was so interesting that whenever a lot of people pointed out that this guy is incompetent, this guy doesn't have the skill, this guy doesn't have even the understanding, people tend to reduce this thing to identity politics, you know. Yeah, maybe because he's white and yada, all these type of things, you know. And I think at the end of the day, it proved that way, that there he is. He didn't only fail at Eskom. This guy failed even where he had the support of the board, of the shareholder there at NAMPEC and all that. He proved his track record was that. And I think we as South Africans, we need to look over the politics of identity politics, like, okay, he was a black man, he was a white man. You know what I mean? Here's a white man. All of us in South Africa needed electricity and all of that. He couldn't provide for that. You could come up with whatever excuses that you need to come up with in order to shelter him or to protect him. But the fact of the matter is that the numbers, they don't lie. We were in a better space before him, and we're in a worse state after him. Now, today we're sitting in a situation whereby you get Mteto Nyati, who is the group chairman of Eskom under his leadership, and the new CEO, and the board as well, and the executive management of Eskom. They are running this thing almost proper, if for lack of a better word. Because now, if you're sitting with almost 9 months of no load shedding, and we're about to hit a year soon whereby we don't have load shedding and all that, clearly there is something that is done right in Eskom at the moment. Touch wood, and hopefully nothing happens and all that. And it is under their leadership that we've seen this success and all these things. And I think we need to give credit where credit is due and all of that, under the leadership as well of the Minister of Electricity, Dr. Khosi Ramukopo, who's also an engineer for that matter. So I think, you know, we should not have a wool pull over our eyes that somebody, maybe because they sound right and all these things. And it was so frustrating for me when I listened to the media that whenever they were talking about under the Ruyter, people were talking about like, yeah, but he's exposing, connect the dots. He's exposing corruption and all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, that part I see. But how about the part where he promised that in 2 years' time, I'm going to sort out this thing that is called load shedding in South Africa? And he didn't. Instead of him coming out and say, hey, you know what, my KPIs, I failed in what I had to do in delivering it, ending load shedding. I think I need to step aside. I'm incompetent, whatever the case may be. I need to step away so that somebody with the right skills and knowledge and know-how can come in and sort out this issue of load shedding and all that. Instead of him saying that, he tends the whole thing. Like everybody's talking about this unknown minister that he was talking about. I'm not saying he doesn't exist, but it doesn't help that he doesn't say anything about that minister. He doesn't name a name, and he runs off. He goes overseas like, hey, my life is in danger and all that. But at least when you're overseas, you can even say it on Zoom and say, hey, on such a day, I met with Minister so and so, and he said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know what I mean? And even today, and I bet you, like it'll be 2030, you and I wouldn't know who that minister is. Andrew the director will take that thing to the grave. I don't know if this thing is real, does it exist or not, for that matter. And it doesn't help that he doesn't say anything. But I'm grateful that we're in a situation whereby load shedding is getting better. And we're grateful that the right leadership is in the right place. A very competent leadership is in the right space, and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I'm glad that that's happening. I'm glad and I'm grateful for the men and women at Eskom who are doing most of the work at this point in time, and they need to be commended as well, you know. And I believe if you get the right leadership and then the people are able to follow and believe that vision of that leadership. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts about this, the incompetence of Andrew the Ruyter, and also the incompetence of our government for that matter. It needs to be mentioned because they're the ones who appointed this man.